I'm Jill Stafford. I'm the principal of Lowry Freshman Center in Allen, Texas, and I've been the principal there for 13 years. The Freshman Center is a little bit different, and that's why I'm doing this presentation as the Freshman Center, so you can see that. But one of the keys that I put in the description is it's without phones. And so it was really important to me that that be part of the presentation. We have 1,670 freshmen, and that's a small class for us. One of the things that I'm going to talk about with Minga is that as I've been in this education a long time, we've seen a lot of things come and go. A lot of companies will say, we have your answer, we will give you anything you want, and some of you even heard that a little bit ago. Something that is really unique with Minga is I have not been disappointed with what I have received from them as a company or as a customer service. And so you'll see some of that as I go through this. Because one of the things that's also very important is it is not going to be something that they throw at you and tell you how to run it. We were using mainly for hall passes. That is a small part of what Minga is doing now on our campus. So the first part is Minga is a digital campus management platform that used mainly, as I said, we wanted to find a way to do hall passes and things like that. But really, it's enhancing the student engagement with them having some responsibility. But again, I was trying to figure out how to do it without phones. Because part of it is, they can use their phone for their digital ID, but we don't allow phones. We use like our homecoming dance. I knew who all was gonna be there. We always know who bought a ticket, but you might not always know when they get there. And one of the keys at Lowry, again, they're freshmen. They don't drive. And so it's important for us to know where they are, even if it's at the dance. They're high schoolers, but they're 9th grade. So when I do an event check-in like that, I have the list, I upload it in Minga. We check them in with our phones, because adults can have the phones, but this is also a night thing where they have their phones on them at that point. But we check them in, it then immediately sends an email to the parents and says, your child has checked in. Greatest thing ever. And that was early on when I started really using it. I thought, I can do that. And then when they check out, because also freshmen who think they are grown decide they want to leave in an hour later, and then they check out, and we check out through Minga, and it immediately sends their parents an email. So that's part of the communication that I was like, and I didn't have to do anything. I just set it up and do that. So that's part of event check-in. We also have them about increasing engagement. We have them check into basketball games, football games, any other theater events, things like that, because then they earn points. And that we'll get to some of that later. You can set up what points are. We use different ways to get points, and I can decide what those points are, how they're done, how they're used. What I found, again, at Freshman Center is kids love it. It's almost like getting a sticker. And we think that in secondary, they're past that. They're not past it at all. But the digital ID is a way that it does show that student where they are. I can have access to what their schedule is, so that although they don't have the digital ID on them, meaning their phone, if I see them in the hallway, I can check with them and figure out exactly where they're supposed to be. And I also have ways to add different things to them. If they shuttle to the high school second period, their digital ID will say that, because I have them in a second period group that shows that they're going to the high school. So I always know which groups and what they're supposed to be on their digital ID. We can do behavior tracking, but it's also if they do get in trouble, if they've done too many things that, they have to buy IDs and things like that. All of that is done now through Minga. So I keep those records and know that that's what we're having done. So we know when they're doing that, if they have a lunch detention, it goes through Minga. It gives them the alert that they have a lunch detention. If they don't serve it, then it can also escalate that consequence to what would be our next, whatever I've decided in the system is their next consequence. So why Minga at LFC? Again, we were trying to find a solution for the hall passes, understanding where they were. This solution for us has grown and has really followed with a lot more things. And so again, it's about accountability and engagement. But I think for us, this one has really met the mark more than some of the others we had. And it does support the mission that to build a positive and productive campus culture. So this is the first part, which is my class. This is what teachers will see. It's uploaded every class. It works with our student information system. We use Skyward, so that goes through Clever for us. Benefits to this is you can see everyone at a glance. The people that are at the top, this is a new feature really, or fairly new, that when they have an active hall pass, they're gonna be at the top of the list. So you can tell who's out of class and where they are, because then this basically gives you they're in a hall pass and how much time is left on that hall pass. As you're seeing that, you can also there's several things that you can do just in my class. But the key to this, and as I talked about points, and I wanted to talk more about increasing engagement, The praise is the part that was really standing out to us, but we at the beginning of the year didn't really know what that looked like. I had a teacher who, if I was standing out in front of you right now, he would be like, Minga's the best thing. Someone who wasn't unnecessarily engaged, but he said, I want to try this out. He saw a kid doing something right. He sent a praise that we had set up and decided to give a praise point. That kid comes back the next day and says, what did you send to my parents? And he was like, what do you mean? So my parents said you sent something that I did something positive in class. Well, light bulbs went on and we decided, hold on, let me redo more research. So then our goal now was, how can we utilize that? Talk about the positives. Because again, at 9th grade, we're usually talking about they're not in class, they're absent, they're meeting up in the bathroom, they're vaping, they're fighting, there's not the positives. They're happening, but we're not talking about it. And I felt like I wanted to spend more time talking about that. How can we focus on some positive things? Again, we just have the year. And so that became something that our team focused on with how can we utilize praise points and then what do we do with it? This was the funniest part of Lowry this year because we talked about Minga points like they were the best things ever. The kids wanted a Minga point like you would not believe. And nothing had been done with a Minga point yet. We were just giving them. But they wanted them and they didn't know why. So it kind of became this joke. It was like, we're gonna give Minga points. And they're like, well, what for? I don't know. I don't know. And then I'm thinking, we've gotta do something. We have to do something. And so that came into, okay, how are we gonna do that? What are we gonna do with it? What does that look like? At Lowry, we do have a 1 class period a day that's called Connections. And I have in the past. However, it's more like an advisory or homeroom, so we call it Connections. We do a lot of things in Connections, but the main thing that ended up happening was that's where we were going to really focus on how do we utilize these points and try to make sure that they had value. In their Connections class, we built in Minga, and I can pull up ours, I have a team. Every Connections class is a different team on my campus. So when a student gets a Minga point, not only does it become theirs personally, it was adding to their team that was their Connections class. So now we were looking at how can I build that piece and utilize that as well. And again, it was building the engagement, but trying to figure out how we do that. Also, it's ways you can give guidance, you can send messages, things like that. So this was kind of the first part. Teachers had training on it, but they were really just minimally using it. But I had some people that were building that swell of, wait a minute, we can use this. As I mentioned, the teacher, Chris Brooks, and he's one of my CTE teachers. He's the one who was like, Jill, we need to do this. He figured out how to focus on the praise piece more than the other. And he's the one, he had kids that were cleaning his room because they wanted Minga points. He has computers, so they were like, wiping down desks, all those fun things. But that brought us to flex time. Flex time is how you use, and a lot of campuses use it for a flexible schedule, and I'll show you how that's utilized for us as well. But we started also, one of the solutions we needed was we had a system where we were using Google Docs like you wouldn't believe to track things like who's signing up for tutorials before school, who's signing up after school, who's gonna be assigned to that, who gets the email saying they're gonna show up. We set up Minga to have those scheduled flex times before in school and after school. We set the number of seats that are available in each subject area, and so kids sign up for the tutoring that they're gonna go to. So we use it for event check-in like I talked about. That can now be set up, we'll be using it, where we know where they're gonna be and we'll put that in as a flex time event, and then that's how they will check in. The clubs on campus use it all the time. They use it for attendance, they use it for communicating, they use it for an event happening before school, after school, and sometimes during school. It is used also on a lot of campuses when you do have a flexible schedule for, like, if you're gonna do intervention across the campus. We also had the Minga party where it was those kids that signed up for the Eagle Run, they had their own separate party. So they were given points for that. This was how we got all the students to be a part of it and have an opportunity to be a part of what was happening. If they're in the top 20 groups, then they're gonna come down to our Minga party. And that means we have like 450 students possibly. A lot of kids to manage. My cafeteria is not that large. So, I mean, it's close to that probably, but we wanna give them choice. So we have flex time set up for they can choose to go to the fields behind our building. They can go to have a study time in the auditorium. They can do games in the cafeteria. They can go to the library, and they can go to the gym. I've got about 4 people checking them in. Checking a student in through flex time on our phones, you scan their ID that has a barcode on it. It goes like, they are in 3 minutes. We have maybe 150 kids checked in into each event, and we know where they are and when they're there. That has changed our game. Because usually if you asked me a couple years ago, can we have a party and separate 500 kids into these 5 places and just let them go? I would have looked at you like you've lost your mind. Because I am a control freak. I'm responsible for these 1,700 students, and I need to know where they are. Now I feel confident that I know where they are. So again, this builds the connection, builds the engagement, builds the accountability, and it allows us to then celebrate things that we haven't been able to celebrate before in a different way. This is an example of a tutoring log that we had that was, and again, pull just a random day. This is an after-school tutoring. And so we've set all these up so that they're happening on the days that we have tutoring. Really easy to do to set up because you just basically copy it again and again. And so we know where they're supposed to go. It'll also tell me what time they registered or what time they checked in, and then if we check them out, what time they checked out. Best data for parents you've ever seen. Because when a parent's like, well, I drop them off for tutoring every day and they're failing. And I'm like, hold on, let me pull up that kid, and I don't have to go to the date then. I can pull up that kid, pull up his data, and say he came, he showed up at 8:40. We start class at 8:45. So he was there for maybe a minute before he left to class. And the parents are like, got it. So that's, again, another way to use flex time to be able to build the engagement, but also build the accountability for not only us, but the students as well. But the tardy piece, that was a key piece because I was looking, and it's kind of funny because for a long time I wanted it to be, we have a pass that's printed and they have to go. Well, that was taking them, if they were gonna spend so much time going to a kiosk to get a pass, then they would spend 20 more minutes. Our building's not small. Remember, we have a lot of people. So they were wandering, and I thought, okay, wait a minute. They don't need to do that. They go to class, the teacher counts them tardy, they're tardy. And that's all done in here. And then it can also be, the consequence can be given, and that's based on whatever our rubric is. And I can set it up that way in here. If they have the consequence and they don't serve it, it can be escalated. And I will say, and I give them another shout out. I know there's a lot of Minga guys in the room today, but the best customer service I've ever worked with. And if I have a question or a concern, they are right there on it. All right, I appreciate it. Yeah, thank you, yeah.